they'll know, oh, yeah, this guy's really interested in what I have to say. People feel great about that. Most people really enjoy it when someone actually gives them the time of day and takes an interest in them and their life. And if you're able to do that, and it's not a very difficult thing to do, it's actually do less. Shut up and just let that other person talk and let them say their bit. Don't jump in, let them finish their entire response. And of that response, anything that seemed interesting to you in that response that you'd like to know more about, that's your follow-up question.
Hey mate, I'm Coach Mitch and welcome to the Unbreakable Man podcast. It's my goal to help you achieve excellent results in the area of your health and physical fitness, your career or business, your relationships, and in your own personal passions. This is going to be your one-stop shop if you are the kind of man who wants to achieve his fullest potential in life. And the only way to do that is by becoming unbreakable.
Hey guys, Coach Mitch here, and welcome to today's episode of the Unbreakable Man podcast. Now, today I wanted to talk to you guys about what I believe is probably the most important and valuable skill that any man or indeed any person could learn to improve their lives and improve the lives of the people around them. And that number one skill for human beings is communication. I've said this in other videos prior to this, that I think that it's almost criminal that communication isn't an entire class and subject in school, because it's something that we do every single day. Even when you don't realize it, you're still communicating certain messages to other people in your life. Even without you saying the words, you're still communicating a message with your body language, with your tone of voice, with your actions. Almost everything we do is communication. And it's telling the people around us about who we are, about what we like and what we dislike, about our temperament, our attitude towards things, and how we communicate with other people has a direct impact on the quality of our life. Because I don't care how self-made you might think you are, everything in our lives, to get it really right, requires the effort, the attention, and the coordination with other people. Human beings, we are pack animals. We require each other to not only survive, but thrive. So if you want to thrive, being a great communicator is, in my opinion, the number one way to do that. If you can do this, you can overcome any other shortcoming that you may have. Because communication is all about how you create bonds with other people and how you can influence other people to be on your team. And if you've got a big team full of quality human beings, you can accomplish almost anything. So if you're, as a man watching this right now, this is going to be useful for you if you're a father, you have children that you need to influence to do the right things and make good choices. So if you're a dad right now and your kids are misbehaving at home or they're not listening to you, or you're kind of fighting with them or anything like that, then this is going to be a really useful episode. If you're a leader in your professional or personal life, just within your friendship group, or if you have employees that you're trying to motivate to work harder or get more done or be more self-sufficient, or anything like that, then this is going to be a really good episode for you. If you are a man watching this who is in a relationship and you maybe squabble with your partner a little bit, or it's not going as well as you might like it to go, maybe it's not as passionate as you'd like it to be, or you don't feel like you get the respect that you want from your partner, this is going to be a really good episode for you. Or if you're a single guy and you're looking to meet a special person for yourself, but you're not very good at talking to women, you get nervous, or you don't know what to say, or it just doesn't seem to work out, or perhaps you don't portray yourself in the way that you want to, then this is going to be a really good episode for you as well. Because communication is communication, guys. Regardless of who you are talking to or what the purpose of the conversation is, whether it's professional or whether it's you trying to create a romantic relationship with someone else, The skills that we're going to talk about in this episode are going to be universal across the board in each of those areas. So what I want you to think about first and foremost is think about some people that you already know, either personally or just from the internet or from stories that you've heard, who you believe are great communicators. Think about some of the speeches that you might have learned in school or in history or something like that. Speeches given by men in the past that have inspired the actions of thousands or even millions of people, that have inspired the ideas and thoughts of millions of people. That's the power of communication. When people say sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, I think that's bullshit. Words are very, very powerful, and that's the real power, I believe, that one man can have is in his words. Making sure that you're a good communicator will absolutely change the game. Way more than making sure that you are physically powerful, being mentally powerful and being able to string a couple of really good sentences together can absolutely change the way that your life looks, because good communication is good leadership, is good influence. And I don't care how strong you are physically, if we've got a pool table in our house, it doesn't matter how many deadlifts I do and how much weight I can pick up. It's a lot easier if I can communicate effectively and get 3 or 4 other blokes to help me shift that. That's the power of communication. You get things done faster. So think about guys that you have heard of before, or maybe guys you even know personally who are great communicators. Think about your friends that might be really good with the ladies. What is it that they do? How is it that they are communicating that allows them to have more opportunities with women that perhaps you don't have? Or think about perhaps you have a boss who's really good at getting up in front of the whole office and motivating everyone to put in the extra mile when it comes to getting their work done and producing outcomes. Or think about speeches or monologues that you've loved in movies or in historical events that made you go, wow, that was crazy. You think of like Martin Luther's I Have a Dream speech, for example. That's going to go down in history. And it wasn't just about the words, it was about the way it was delivered. It was about where those words came from and how it made everyone in that audience feel. Not just the people who are there listening to it in person, but even how it makes people feel today when they see a video of it. Imagine having the ability to influence people on that level. All it is communication skills. So I've compiled 5 of my kind of main communication tips. Now, there's probably more, and if you can think of more, if you're watching this and you're a big fan of this topic, comment down below with any communication tips that you might have for yourself or that you use really effectively and you might want to pass on to someone else who's watching this video. Comment that down below. I'd love to see what your advice might be on this one as well. But with that said, let's get into it. Now, the first thing that I wanted to mention here is that communication is not just about the words that you use. In fact, the words that you use are the minority of what we actually use to communicate a message. And here's a good example of what I mean by this. Think about when you are texting somebody or you're emailing them. And sometimes in those texts or emails, they can be taken the wrong way. You might just type something, and depending on what the words that you wrote, the other person might think that you were kind of upset or angry with them, even though you weren't at all. Like you just sent them an email. And you're thinking, why would you assume that I was angry? Why do you think I was angry? Why did I get that kind of sharp or biting email response to an email that I just thought was fine? Well, it's because that without the tone of voice that you can get from having a phone conversation, for example, and without the body language that you get from actually standing in front of someone and talking to them, those words can be easily misconstrued. So body language is a huge part of communication. The way that you stand, the way that you walk, you move, that tells people about you. That tells people whether you appear to be a confident person or whether you appear to be a shy person. You know, if you're walking around with your head down, you're hunched over, your arms are crossed, it's not making anyone want to speak to you. Or it's certainly not making anyone feel like this is someone who has something important to say. You know, when you think about those men that we spoke about earlier who are great communicators, how do you picture them moving around? How do you picture them standing on stage, giving their speech to their audience? When you think about perhaps your boss, if he's a great communicator or she's a great communicator, when you think about them talking to all of you in the office, how do they do it? What's the pose that they take? What's the posture that they have as they're doing that? How do they use their hands and their facial expression as they're delivering that message? Because that's what you're seeing, and you're taking in that information as you're hearing the words and the tone of their voice. And all of that information is what's producing the feeling within you that perhaps makes you want to listen to that person a bit more, or really respect what they have to say when they start to say it. And that's what allows them to influence you in the way that they do. So body language is a big thing. Next time you're trying to influence someone, next time you're trying to communicate with them, not just influence them, but communicate with them, just take half a second to just think about how your body language is in that scenario. You know, how are you? What are you bringing to that conversation from a body language perspective, and also a tone of voice perspective as well? You know, do you seem frustrated in your voice? Is that coming out in your voice? Well, if you're talking to someone like that and they've not actually done anything to frustrate you, then they might take offense to that and then not be open to any further communication afterwards. You know, if we're going back to one of the scenarios I mentioned earlier, if you're a man who's not getting the feeling that he wants from his relationship, but you're coming home every single day a bit grumpy, and you speak to your partner without addressing that grumpiness in your voice, then no wonder you've not created the harmony that you're looking for in your household. And no wonder you're getting some blowback from those conversations, and it's not going as smoothly as you'd like it to, because of what you're communicating, not because of the words that you're saying, but because of the body language and the tone of voice that you're bringing to it. So just as a general idea on how to do this really well, just have, firstly, nice, tall, straight posture, chest out, shoulders back, head up nice and tall, especially if you're talking to a group of people. That's the way to do it. Use your hands as well to start to convey your message. It's almost like you're throwing the words and the message at that person. And that hand movement conveys confidence, and it conveys your belief in your message. And you know damn well, if you've ever seen someone give a speech where their hands are in their pockets, or their head's down, or they're kind of holding their hands, or they're folding their arms, how do you feel when you see someone talk in that posture? It doesn't make you want to listen. You don't look at that person and go, man, that's a guy that I want to listen to. So you've got to become that sort of a person as well, who communicates with their body, who communicates with their tone of voice, their facial expression. And look, that's a skill that's going to take some time, but just be aware of it, because it is important. Now, the next thing on here is storytelling. One of the best ways to communicate to someone else is by telling a story. That's where stories came from. It's a form of communication to get a message across. You know, it's the reason why a lot of kids don't really like reading textbooks, because it's pretty dry. You know, you're talking at me instead of telling me in a way that draws me in, that makes me want to listen. Oh man, what happened next? Holy shit, that's crazy. Then what happened? And now all of a sudden you're listening to me and you want to know more. You know, if I'm trying to influence a man to take his health and his fitness into his own hands and to start to change his life, I can tell him that if you get fit, you're going to be a better dad, you're going to have more energy, you're going to be more attractive for your partner, you're going to be more confident. All those things may be true. But if I sit down and talk to him about the story of a man that came to me with no confidence, he was not being a good role model for his kids. He felt bad every single day when he was coming home and he would sit down on the couch with a beer and his kid would try to come up to him and want to play and he just didn't have the energy. He was depressed about the fact that him and his partner hadn't had sex in months and neither of them ever had the energy to actually start that. And all of a sudden he sees one of the Unbreakable Man ads and decides, enough is enough. I need to do something to change my life. And he shows it for his very first session. It was fucking hard. He worked his absolute arse off. But by the end of the session, he realized he'd just done something that he honestly didn't even think he had it in him anymore. But he was able to complete the session. That was day one. When he got down there, he met a whole bunch of other guys who were like-minded, just like him, other fathers in the same boat, who just wanted to be better role models for their kids, who just wanted to feel fit and energetic and attractive for their partners again and get the most out of their life. When he saw that, he thought that this was for me. I really need to stick at this. So he put in the effort, kept coming every single week, and 6 weeks down the track, he'd lost 10 kilos. He was playing with his kids after work every single day, and him and his wife were going great guns, especially in the bedroom. They'd reignited that fire again, and he'd got a whole bunch of new friends who were also the same kind of person and who also wanted to create the same sort of lifestyle. Now, of those two ways of me trying to communicate to you that getting fit is a good idea for you as a father, which of those really drew you in more? Which of those made you have a connection more? Telling a story is a fantastic way to get a message across. Especially if, you obviously got to make sure that story is interesting and relevant, but you don't have to make anything up. You just think about your life. Guarantee there's something that's happened to you in your life that was interesting, and it might be interesting because it was difficult, or interesting because it was funny, or interesting because it was such an uncommon occurrence. But if you're talking to someone about a story and you're trying to get a message across, so that's a great way to do it. But even just to entertain someone, if you can tell a story that's entertaining, that's funny, then people are going to see you as the funny, entertaining guy and want to speak to you more. Another great way to communicate is through stories. Now, the next thing on the list, ask questions. And this is a great way just to get to know somebody, is by asking questions about that person. And for myself, if I meet somebody new and I'm trying to build rapport with this person, I want to find out, is this person someone that I'd like to speak to more? Is this person someone that would be cool for me to have in my life? So I've got to ask some questions to figure that out. And really what I'm trying to do by asking some questions is to see if there's any common ground. And I think about the things that I like. I like motorcycles and fast cars, speed in general, basically. I like adventuring, hiking, climbing, abseiling, traveling, all that sort of stuff. I like history. I like martial arts. I like a whole bunch of stuff. So if I find out that this person does one of any of those things, then we can have a full conversation about it. We can talk about our favorite car, or we could talk about, our favorite fighter, or the style that we're practicing currently in our lives. And from that, the conversation's going to flow. Now, and that's such a simple way of doing it, and you'll find it become a very natural conversation as well. And there's questions that you can ask that are totally just icebreaker questions, where they're like really random and kind of entertaining. You can ask sort of those what if questions and see what someone's what way the other person might go. But a really great question that I like to ask, if I don't know anything about someone and I'm trying to start a conversation, I'm just going to say, what do you do for fun? Because instantly what I'm doing by asking that question is, I'm going to get this person to tell me what they really like doing. I'm going to get that person to tell me something that they do that they enjoy. And then if someone's going to want to talk about anything, they're going to want to talk about something that they enjoy. And that's, people talk about, what do you do for work and this and that. And unless someone really loves their job, the what do you do for work conversation is something that they probably have every single time they meet someone new. And it gets a bit old and boring, especially if they don't really care about their job. It's just a means to an end for them. So that's my number one question. What do you do for fun? I always start out with that. And then we can flow through that and again, build rapport, because perhaps what they do for fun is something that I might like to do for fun or currently do for fun. Or I can think of something relevant to that topic. So that's a really easy one, really, really easy question to ask. But when you're asking questions as well, one thing that's really important is don't worry about what the next thing that you're going to say is. Just completely forget about that. Just ask the question. Listen to exactly what they say. Listen very intently. Take in all their words. Because a fantastic way to build rapport with someone and communicate effectively is to show that you are actually listening to them. When someone feels like you've really heard them, you've actually taken the time out of your day to really hear what it is that they're saying, and they will know that when you ask a follow-up question, they'll know, oh man, this guy's really interested in what I have to say. People feel great about that. Most people really enjoy it when someone actually gives them the time of day and takes an interest in them and their life. And if you're able to do that, and it's not a very difficult thing to do, it's actually do less. Shut up and just let that other person talk and let them say their bit. Don't jump in, let them finish their entire response. And of that response, anything that seemed interesting to you in that response that you'd like to know more about, that's your follow-up question. Oh man, that's crazy. If that's your favorite car, why do you like that car? Well, what do you like about that car? I've never heard of that before. Tell me about it. And then you get into this whole conversation. Oh man, that's really cool. And what's great about that is you really do get to know someone by doing that. And I think a great question always to ask after you've asked the what do you do for fun question, or even what do you do for work, is why do you do that? Why do you do that? Because maybe they have a great reason to do it. And people's reasons for doing things is what tells you the most about them. The why. People's reasons for liking something, or people's reasons for taking a job, that's how they were motivated to get there in the first place. So a great follow-up question is always why. And a lot of people are never asked that. Like, oh, what do you do for work? Yeah, no, I work in construction. Why do you do that? Why do you work in construction? Why do you like construction? And they can go through the whole, if they really do have a passion for their job, they can tell you exactly what they love about it. And then you get to learn what kind of a person that they are. I really love building things. I love sitting back at the end of a project and just seeing that house in front of me. And I know that I built that house. And if someone responds to a question like that for me, I'm like, cool. I'm talking to a passionate person here. I'm talking to a person that takes pride in their work, and I'm a person who takes pride in my work. So, we can gel on that. So it's a great one. It's super simple. Ask questions. What do you do for fun is one of my favorite ice-breaking questions for anyone that I'm just striking up a conversation with. If it's like at a party or something social like that, super, super easy. And then a great follow-up question is why? Why do you do that? Why do you like that? After that, the next thing on there is talk about what they want/like. So that sort of follows on really well from the ask questions thing. What do you do for fun? Talk about the things that they want/like. But I'm going to talk about this one from the standpoint of trying to influence someone, trying to convince them to take an action. Now, so if you do anything in sales, then you'll already know this stuff. But if you're not a salesperson, learning some of the skills of sales is still absolutely crucial. Because even if you don't think of yourself as a salesperson, every one of us is trying to sell every single day. And I don't mean sell things for money. I mean sell ideas, sell suggestions. You You going up to your kid's bedroom and telling them that they need to clean their room is you selling them on the idea of then cleaning their room, right? And it's up to them to buy that idea off you. Now, they might buy it if they're already a very tidy person and they actually like things to be clean, because they'll do it themselves. They already know the value of cleaning the room. Or they might do it if they see you as an authority figure that they respect. They might just do it simply because it's mom or dad told me to do this, so I'm going to do it. But if we're honest, for the fellas watching this that have kids, you know that it's probably not that simple. You might have to ask your kid a couple of times. And it's not until you get really pissed off at them that they might actually do something about it, because now it's the sell becomes more forceful, and perhaps there's the incentive is, if you don't do this, I'm going to take your phone away from you or switch the internet off or something like that, and it sort of gets to that negative point, right? Which is not really where you want it to, but sometimes it goes that way. But in that scenario, if you're trying to sell your child on the idea of cleaning their room, which is probably something that they don't really want to do or care about, then the question you've got to ask yourself is, why would my kid want to clean their room? Because right now, the only reason why you want them to clean their room is because you don't like it, the fact that it's dirty. But they don't give a shit about that. People care about what they care about, not what you care about. If you want to make someone care about what you care about, then you need to make them care about it too. If they don't care, then they're not going to do it. If you don't care about being fit, then there's nothing that I can do to convince you to come and train with UBM. If you don't care about being mentally strong and successful and have a great relationship, then there's nothing I can do to convince you to come and join us at an Unbreakable Man retreat. But notice, as I said those things, you're probably thinking, well, I do care about being fit. I do care about being mentally strong. I do care about being successful, and I do care about having a good relationship. Exactly. Because I've just mentioned 4 things that doing Unbreakable Man will give you. It's not about me. It's not about what I think will be good or why I think you should join it. I'm already thinking about, well, what is it that this man wants, and how can what I offer help him get that? That's all that matters. So going back to the cleaning the child's room scenario, you got to ask yourself the question, why would my kid want a clean room? How does it help them? What is the result of that? And, it could be difficult because it's probably quite hard to make your kid care about having a clean room. If I was just to stay on this for like another minute and give you some options in this particular scenario, firstly, number 1, be a fucking good example. If your room isn't clean, if your garage is full of crap and dirty and messy and the shit everywhere, then even though you're telling your kid to clean their room, your actions or your lack of action in cleaning up your own shit is communicating to your child that it's actually not necessary to be clean and tidy. If you were a clean and tidy person in all the areas of your life, then the chances that your child would also follow in that vein would be much higher, because they would at least know that you really mean it when you say you want things to be clean and tidy. So number 1 is actually lead by example. You are communicating just through your actions by leading by example. But the other thing you could be doing as well is think about what is important to your kid. They want to be popular at school, or if they're a teenager, if they're a teenage boy, they might want to, be popular with the girls, right? So you say, hey, look, man, you can't bring a girl over here, dude. This room looks disgusting. Any woman walks in here, she's gonna think that you're you're a grub, and she's gonna want nothing to do with you. It smells, it's horrible in here, man. Like, you're really hurting your chances. Or even if you think about, if you're a guy who's successful, then that being clean and tidy and being organized is a part of being successful. You go to your kid, hey, look, man, the reason why I always ask you to clean your room is because if you take this this mindset into all the other areas of your life where you get things in order, you do things correctly, you have your stuff organized, then you're going to be able to control your own future. You're going to be the kind of person who can actually make their life the way they want it to be. But if you can't even clean your room, how on earth are you going to be successful in your career? Or how on earth are you going to be the kind of guy that attracts the woman that he wants? You know, you're starting to talk again about all the stuff that's actually important to your kid. And that's how you're convincing them to start to take a certain action. You know, so if you're thinking about trying to influence someone in some way, whether it's your kid or even your partner, or if it's a woman that you've just met that you'd like to create a romantic situation with, you're thinking about, well, how does her going on a date with me benefit her, right? What is she going to get out of this interaction with me? And that's what I'm trying to portray. Now, the last thing on here is have a vision. Like, this is about inspiring and motivating action from other people. Having a vision, you know, and I really think this is important as a father. I think this is super important if you want to have a great relationship with your partner and also a great bond with your children and have them look at you as the pillar of the family and someone truly worthy of respect and admiration. You have to have a vision. You know, if you're trying to convince your partner and your family to do a certain thing, then you have to be able to paint a vision for them of what kind of a life it is that you want to create for them, and how if we all work together on this, we can have this together as a family. You know, think about all the great leaders in history. Again, we've thought about Martin Luther King before. We think about, what were some other ones that I thought of? Tony Robbins, obviously a great speaker as well. You know, think some of the other fellas that you might see on the social media and all that kind of stuff. You know, they have a vision, right? They have an ideal of how the world is going to look if we all work on this thing together. And that ideal benefits everyone within the vision. So if you are a leader in some way in your life, obviously if you're a father, you're a leader. If you're a leader in your friendship group, if you're an employer and you run a business, or you're a coach of some description like that, like you are trying to influence a group of people to move in a particular direction, well, you've got to create the vision, the pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, right? The thing that you're all working towards together as a team, and why that is going to be a fantastic outcome for everyone within that team. If you have and this is obviously not just great for your communication skills, but for you personally as well, man, as a dude, have a vision for your life, a vision for the way you want things to be. And oftentimes, if you really have that and you're passionate about it, you believe in it, you're going to end up talking about it with people anyway. You're going to be communicating that passion and that belief through your body language and your tone of voice because you're so certain that this is what you want, because you've seen enough evidence that proves how important this is for you and how much you want this to be the case. People will automatically be drawn to you as you communicate this message out because of that confidence, because of that passion and that certainty, which only comes over time. But naturally, you're going to draw people to you because they're probably going to like that vision as well. And they're going to think, fuck, I'd love to be the pillar of my family and have a great relationship with my partner and be that person that my children can look up to and respect and admire. I really want that too. So let's go and find out how John is able to create that. I want to know more about John. Let's talk to John a bit more. So have a vision, gentlemen. You know, if you want to communicate really, really effectively, paint that rich picture for the people in your life that you're trying to influence and bring with you. So those are my 5 tips for better communication. And if there was anything that you think is a really good tip for better communication that wasn't on that list of 5, and there's definitely many more, comment them down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And also, no doubt, anyone who's watching this video may may absolutely want some extra tips. So comment down below. Love to hear what you say. With that, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I look forward to speaking to you again on the next one. Cheers.
Hey mate, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Unbreakable Man podcast. If you did, it would be absolutely fantastic if you could leave us a 5-star review, because that's going to help us get our message in front of more men who need to hear it. Now, if you have some feedback for me, I'd love to hear that too. Comment down below. And if you just need some mini doses of Unbreakable Man motivation throughout your week, then you can follow us across all social platforms. On Facebook, it's Unbreakable Man Challenge. On Instagram, it's Unbreakable Man_challenge. And on TikTok and YouTube, it's just Unbreakable Man. Your support would be absolutely invaluable. Now, last but not least, do not forget, men aren't born, they're built.